Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Emily Kobier-Schell and I am a member of the BuildUp editorial board. BuildUp is Europe's largest international portal for energy efficiency in buildings. It is a unique community that provides the opportunity to discuss, contribute, and collaborate with other experts in this field. BuildUp aims to bring together stakeholders working in the building and construction sector to reap the collective intelligence about energy reduction in buildings by encouraging knowledge exchange. Our editorial work is organized around the topic of the month, which allows us to dig deeper into specific themes. Each month, several items are produced by BuildUp, such as overview and technical articles and written interviews. But that's not all. BuildUp also offers the opportunity to host webinars on topics related to energy efficiency in buildings. More recently, BuildUp has also opened its doors to distinguished experts in the field to share their knowledge in front of our cameras in our BuildUp Expert Talks. The BuildUp portal shares daily the most relevant events in the field of energy efficiency, but we also participate actively in many European events around the year, such as EPB Center and REVA conferences, H2020 Interreg and Cost Action events, Covenant of Mayors, and more, always with the aim of further disseminating their results and helping to create high-quality media content. The BuildUp portal is updated daily, reaching around 120 new items each month, including news, events, publications, articles, and video content. But BuildUp is not only us. BuildUp is a community, and we invite you to be a part of it. By becoming a member, you can contribute by uploading your own content and promoting your project news, events, case studies, reports, and more. By contributing content, BuildUp will help you to reach a broader audience through our online portal, our social media channels, and our monthly newsletter. Visit us at www.buildup.eu to find out more. It is a pleasure for BuildUp to host today's webinar titled Knowledge Transfer for Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Sources in Buildings, brought to you by BuildUp, Petini, the In-Plan Project, and Prospect Plus Project. Today's webinar is intended to begin exploring the topic of knowledge transfer for energy efficiency and renewable energy sources in buildings. In particular, we will learn about how BuildUp facilitates knowledge transfer in the sector and how ongoing projects are developing knowledge sharing strategies at the local and regional level by hearing from the In-Plan and Prospect Plus projects. In today's agenda, we'll start by hearing from Beata Vula-Rizvanoli, BuildUp Ambassador, architect and lecturer at the University for Business and Technology, who will briefly introduce the topic of knowledge transfer and how BuildUp acts as a facilitator in this field. Then we'll move to the Prospect Plus project, which will be presented by Giulia Petini, senior energy expert at the Institute for European Energy and Climate Policies. This will be followed by a presentation on the In-Plan project by Tomislav Novosel, expert advisor at the Northwest Croatia Regional Energy Agency. And finally, we'll have a brief Q&A discussion moderated by BuildUp. We invite everyone from the audience to please send us questions through the GoToWebinar platform that can be answered during the Q&A session. Please specify which presenter or project your question is for, or if it is for all speakers. We remind that you will be able to find the webinar recording on the BuildUp portal and on our YouTube channel in the coming days, together with the presentation slides. Now we will move to our first speaker, BuildUp Ambassador, architect, and lecturer at the University for Business and Technology, Beata Vula-Rizvanoli. Beata, I will pass the controls to you. Just one moment. Okay,
hello.
The floor is yours.
If you can hear me well?
Yes, yes.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Emily, for passing the information to me, and looking forward to have a great discussion today. It's a very important topic, which we will discuss it further in 3 different sessions, as you already presented. I am Beata Vula-Rizvanoli. I'm an architect, founder at BVR Atelier, and also lecturer at the university. I am active in the industry and also in the academia. So one of my most preferable topics is knowledge transfer, because I understand how it works in between these two. Actually, the days nowadays that we are discussing all around Europe, but not only, are in front of challenges, global challenges, and climate change is one of them. And countries, either countries or either academia or either the industry need to have prompt responses to several challenges, and these responses has to be well thought. Otherwise, we need to lose a lot of time coming to a decision-making process in what we want to, or how we want to answer to these global challenges. And that's where the knowledge transfer is very important and comes to the fore. The way it works is that knowledge transfer brings together all the participants, all the stakeholders within the industry, and encourage them to collaborate and communicate. And that's where build-ups come in helping us in communicating and bringing all the stakeholders together. It helps us, or it enhances innovation on the way of how we communicate and collaborate. It's not about the academia or the industries to start and build something from the beginning, but they can use examples and experience and expertise from the previous projects and previous results. Developing expertise is another very important topic which BuildUp is doing very well, and we were going to talk about this in a few minutes when we discuss about how BuildUp is working. Boosting energy efficiency or boosting competence within the projects and industry. It's also what knowledge transfer it's giving us or helping us to do. And finally, improving decision making, because as I mentioned at the beginning, we need to give answers to big challenges very soon, and we should be very responsible in how we respond to these challenges. How do transfer knowledge works among or between EU projects? Transferring the knowledge in between different projects developed within EU help not only building internal capacities within the projects, but also helping other building capacities within the partner countries. Not all the countries within EU are at the same level of doing their policies and their strategies, economical strategies on how to respond to different challenges. And that's why the transferring the knowledge between countries, between universities, or between the industries help us bring the level to, or increase the level of response to different countries and partner countries. Another very important notion which is used is also knowledge donation. Knowledge donation refers to the communication based on individual levels or individual wish to share the knowledge or the intellectual capital that we have with others, and increase or encourage others to do the same with what they know. In this case, we build institutional memory. Why is institutional memory very important? Because not only in private sector, but institution also face the challenge of employees leaving the institution or a company. It is roughly estimated that 20% of employees leave the company or the institution during the year. And in this case, almost 90% of the knowledge leave together with the employee. And that's why it's very important to share the knowledge within the project or within the institution or within the company in order to bring this memory or to build this memory from the previous projects or previous challenges that the institution or the company may have been facing. Supporting thematic expertise, it's very important as well, because that's what BuildUp is doing with a topic of the month. Every month, BuildUp is deciding about a topic which is related to a certain expertise, and bring together all the practitioners or people from the academia and industry to contribute to this topic. And in this case, the knowledge is transferred between different people within the same topic and within the same expertise, and innovation may be brought out of this knowledge transfer in between the parties involved. It is very important also to consolidate the innovative tools and communities on how they share information between each other. So EU projects have, in this case, in the energy sector, within the buildings and construction industry, have defined their innovative tool through BuildUp. I will do it. I will explain it in a few minutes. Why transferring the knowledge of energy efficiency and energy sources in the construction industry is very important. It is important because it needs to be developing strategies of how to copy and paste the best practices. Copy and paste the best practices of projects, different projects, individual projects. Copy and paste the information from the academia to the industry. Copy and paste the best policies and strategies between the countries. Contribute to skills development and capacity building. We have a very good video from Luis Lobres, especially talking about how the skill can be developed and how the communication and knowledge transfer between academia and industry can work. And you can find it in the BuildUp Portal. We may share the video later on. It also assists in evaluation of alternatives and site selection, or help the suggestion and give the best suggestion for the compensation and financial possibilities of the projects. We all know that, and from previous researchers, we may found that one of the biggest challenge from implementing energy efficiency and renewables into the building sector is financial. It's the finance. The investors, especially the private investors, are searching for the possible finance which may bring them or boost them, encourage them to finance the energy efficiency standards into their buildings. In this case, countries may bring together people or practitioners to evaluate their best strategies on how to finance and invest their sources into these topics or into these standards. Identify the potential conflicts and resolution processes. The copy and paste, which we discussed it previously, is not only about copying and pasting the standards between the projects. It's also copy and pasting the circumstances of the projects and how to overcome these circumstances, and what was good for one project and how can we do it better in another one. In project management, we say that one of the best tools or one of the tools that help the projects to multiply their results is the documentation. In this case, documentation is working a kind of knowledge transfer from a project to another one. The same shall be working within the different communities. The final one is collect the baseline data for evaluation and audit purposes. Try to find the best solution of audited and how does it work from a country to a country or from a project to a project. All this information is available at the BuildUp Portal, which Emily has presented briefly, which is the largest platform among EU projects and bring information and references to different kind of projects energy efficiency and renewable energy in renewable sources in buildings. So it's completely dedicated to the construction industry. It has been established by European Commission in 2009, and now it's managed by CINEA. And it has a lot of, since 2009, it has continually added information and added results of different projects which have been shared within different communities. What is the scope? The scope of BuildUp is to be the main or the connection point between different stakeholders, including policymakers, including practitioners, industry stakeholders, researchers, and students. It meets, there are specific objectives on how BuildUp is being developed. It's reaping the benefits of Europe collective intelligence or collective information, and disseminate this information to different industries or different audiences. Encourage the exchange of knowledge between practitioners and industry and academia and policymakers, and also to the wide audience of the people interested to be informed about energy efficiency and renewables energy in buildings. Bring together the stakeholders, of course, and improve the behaviors, the general behaviors of the people in this industry, and also support the implementation of the directives regarding the energy energy efficiency directive or a European Green Deal, which is very important on how they are implemented in different countries and how other countries can be improved in their way of implementing these directives. There are, in BuildUp, we used to say that there are two approaches that we follow up, which feed each other. It's inside approach within the ecosystem of the BuildUp, where the ecosystem brought together a lot of practitioners, professionals, which contribute with their content and disseminate the information through overview articles, technical articles, interviews, videos, webinars. So each month they have a topic for which they develop each content, and depending from the audience, they disseminate this information to the broader audience. Doesn't matter if you are ready to read an overview article, you can sit and read the article, or if you want, maybe you're just driving and you want to see just a video or hear a webinar, you are ready to, or you are able to do it within the BuildUp. And also bring this information to the outside community, which is a broader community of BuildUp, through the news, events, publication, case studies, good practices, and good references from the other projects. Emily already mentioned that there are 120 content which are added to the website every month. So if we are talking about a topic, then about that topic there are a lot of content added, so it has a lot of information for everyone. And then what we do is try to bring the audience, the general audience, the audience which contribute to the construction sector, and try to get the information from them and bring back to the ecosystem of BuildUp. Try to rediscuss this information and bring back to the audience. So it's feeding each other. The ecosystem of BuildUp is feeding the community, and it's bringing back again to the ecosystem. Why is BuildUp an example of knowledge sharing? because it's one of the main points where the information about energy efficiency and renewables energy in construction sector is being discussed. It also shares information from other European sources, so not only within the European Commission, but also other sources are being used to disseminate the information to the community, and it also enables to share the content within the stakeholders. So every stakeholders of construction sector can find himself information within the BuildUp portal. How it is being done? It's daily content. BuildUp people, BuildUp employees are and professionals involved do engage to create daily content for and feed the portal with the daily content and new production of what is happening in the industry and specific information for different projects. Webinars each month. We are already following one this month. We are discussing about knowledge transfer. Last month we did discuss about digitalization in building sector, or a month before in February we discussed about renovation, energy and efficiency renovation of historic buildings. So every month there is a topic, a very important topic of the sector, which feed the information with webinars. Usually for webinars, BuildUp collaborate with other stakeholders of the industry or other stakeholders from the academia, and bring together the information to the audience. Topic of the month I already mentioned. It's next month, for example, we will discuss about with the life cycle assessments of the buildings, which is a very important topic, and for which we will have other events in the pipeline. Or in July, we will discuss about energy efficiency affordability for households, which is also a very important topic. So following every month the webinars and the content that BuildUp create, it's very important for each of us to be informed of what is happening and when it is happening and how is our response to what is happening to the industry. User-friendly portal, it's very easy to be used. You may check it yourself. It has you can very easily find the topic of the month and find what are the content for the topic based on what you are interested in. Board of Ambassadors is a board of people, practitioners, professionals, more than 550, if I'm not wrong, from all different EU member states, which are meeting and deciding about the topics and deciding about the calendar of the information to be shared in the portal, and deciding about the strategies how the information shall be disseminated in the portal. And finally, events participation. BuildUp is very active in participating in different events organized all around Europe, so it can bring the information very quickly to the portal and inform the pool of people of almost 17,000 people which are part of the portal so far. How the information has been transferred from, so it brings a lot of sources within the portal and disseminated as information. Who is the audience? The audience, as we already discussed, is the broad community of construction sector, including the industry, the policymakers, the academia, and also the users, the building users. These are the ones that shall finally being informed about what is happening within the sector, and be able to let's say decide about how their building will be used and how the building shall use the benefits of energy efficiency and other sources possible. The sector is always involved in the information sharing between the construction and other sectors involved as a stakeholder, and finally a wider society. And why it is all important is the final footprint that we try to decrease, the final footprint of dioxide carbon of the construction sector and the industry, and this way impact the implementation of European environmental goals. I will close it here. I may speak a lot about BuildUp, but we may do it later on the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Boletta. Thanks so much. Okay, we'll move to our next speaker now. We have Giulia Petini. Let me give you the controls. Okay, Giulia, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Emily. Hello to everybody. Thanks for inviting us. My name is Giulia Pizzini. I'm working at ICP, which is the Institute for European Energy and Climate Policy, which is a research foundation based in the Netherlands, where 25 plus experts work. And I am the coordinator of the Prospect Plus project, which I will present to you today. And I think that it's very linked to what Blerta presented before, because what our main aim is to make knowledge transfer amongst public authorities. Prospect Plus is an H2020 project which started in September 2021 and lasts for 42 months. And it has a predecessor project which was called Prospect, hence the plus. It has 11 partners which are divided into knowledge partners, networks, and internal mentors. Let me check if I managed to change the slide. I know that there is a bit of delay. But Emily, I'm having issue. Oh, here it goes. Okay, sorry about that. So as I said, the main objective of Prospect Plus is to emphasize the need to reduce local authorities' dependence on subsidies. This is because we have a big challenge in front of us. It's been estimated by the European Commission that in order to reach our goals for 2030, we need more than 3,000 billion euros. And only around 15% of these are available as grants or public funding, which means that the remaining 80 to 90% of funds will need to be leveraged from the private sectors. We noticed that especially when it comes to smaller local authorities, there is very little understanding regarding what other options there are aside for subsidies, which include working with the public sector. Therefore, our main aim is exactly to build knowledge and to bring together those local and regional authorities who have experience and have implemented projects and can show full-scale results and lessons learned, but also those who have tested different approaches and can share openly what works and what doesn't work. In order to make those who are only starting their adventure with investing in sustainable energy to feel a bit more confident and less alone, let's say. But what are these innovative financing schemes? There are many options which are often more flexible and quicker than subsidies and don't require applying or writing proposals. So the list you see here is a non-comprehensive list. Of course, these are only some that we touch upon with the Prospect Plus project, but just to read some, there is citizen finance, for example, crowdfunding or energy cooperatives or communities, energy performance contracting, but also less known ones as internal contracting, green bonds, guarantee funds, soft loans, revolving funds, and third-party financing. How we make our capacity building program, we have 4 phases. So the first phase is we of course prepared some learning material and tools. As you can see here, the Prospect Plus project covers 5 thematic areas, 2 concerning buildings, so public buildings and private buildings, but we also go beyond buildings and touch upon public lighting, transport, and we also have a cross-sectoral category, which is where, for example, energy communities are covered, or which encompass 2 or more of the other 4 categories. Then we move on, so all of this material, which I will describe a bit later, is available on the Prospect Plus website. Then we move on to phase 2, which is engaging participants and forming learning groups. So for this, we have a call for application for both mentors and mentees. Mentors are the experienced partners that I mentioned before, and mentees are other local and regional authorities willing to learn from the mentors. We select them through a matching process, and we match in different groups, mentors with mentees, depending on the thematic area and depending on the financial instrument that is needed from the mentee. Then there is the central phase of our project, which is the learning cycle. So we have 4 learning cycles. I will show the timeline later. And each learning cycle is composed by 4 steps plus 2. So you see here, there's a step 0, which is just a webinar, a presentation webinar. There is 1 for mentees and 2 for mentors. And then we go into the different actual steps of the project. So in the first step, it's an online session where the mentor presents its successful project. In step 2, which is again an online session, the mentees present their ideas and discuss with the mentors on the feasibility. Then the step 3, which is, let's say, the best part of the experience, it's a physical meeting. It's 2 days of meetings where the mentees can usually visit the mentor or vice versa, depending on the different learning methods that I will describe in a second, and where the mentees will be able to discuss not only with the main mentor, but with also the rest of the colleagues of the mentors from other units, other departments, on how the project has been implemented in real terms. And then there is a last step, which is step 4, which is an online follow-up, where again, mentees and mentors can discuss on the next steps to take. We also offer 2 bonus masterclasses in Brussels, one at the end of the 2nd learning cycle and one at the end of the 4th learning cycle, but I will again describe to them in a second. We have 3 different methodologies, which you can see here below. We have peer mentoring, which is offered to very advanced mentees, so to those who have a very concrete idea already developed, and they're matched with 1 mentor who follows them on a one-to-one basis. And then we have study visits and local mentoring, which are similar, where more than 1 mentees are matched with 1 mentor. The only difference is that the study visit has a European scope, so mentees and mentors can be matched with different cities or regions from different countries, whereas local mentoring is thought to overcome the language barrier and is therefore foreseen to happen in 1 member state only and in 1 language, which is not English. Because we think this is, we saw in the previous project that this is often a barrier that functionaries and civil servants in local authorities still face. Sorry, these are some pictures from some of our study visits that have happened in the 1st learning cycle that was just concluded in Prospect Plus. So you can see that really people go to visit the project and get to meet the whole team of implementers. And this is the timeline that I was talking about before. So we have 4 learning cycles. The 1st one has ended. The 2nd one is ongoing. The 3rd one will be happening in the fall 23, and now we are recruiting mentees and the fourth one will take place in 2024. And you can also see the timeline of the 2 master classes that are offered now in October 23, and then one towards the end of the project. And then, of course, there is the phase after, which is the monitoring of outcomes. We are, of course, collecting data in order to find out which are the most successful projects and which are the best methods to transfer the knowledge. And then we, of course, look to replicate also the project outcomes beyond the project duration. So we also build a community of practice and offer some other tailor-made tools and advice, which I will describe in a second. But before I go into that, I wanted to show you 3 examples which took place either in the Prospect project or now in the Prospect Plus project. So the first one comes from the Prospect project, and here we matched 2 mentees with a mentor, which is the energy agency of Maribor, Energap, in Slovenia, who successfully implemented an EPC project in 2019, one of the biggest of the region, and which saw the refurbishment of 24 public buildings, mostly schools and sport halls. The project was very big for the city of Maribor because it saw an investment of over 12 million euros and resulted in almost 6,000 megawatt hours saved yearly, which meant at the time almost 450,000 euros of savings. I guess it would be much higher seeing the current energy prices now. Maribor, so Energap, was matched with 2 mentees, which were the cities of Debrecen in Hungary and Kökelberg in Belgium. They both wanted to learn about EPC because they both had the need to refurbish buildings. Kindergarten in the case of Debrecen, and in the case of Kökelberg, the aim was to replace lighting in public buildings that are rented to private people. So, of course, we offer capacity building, so we're not really looking at the end of the process, which would be the implemented projects, but rather in the knowledge transfer. And from this particular case, we saw that there were 3 different levels of change in the 2 mentees, so cognitive change, relational change, but also skill development, which was very important to us. Because first of all, the 2 mentees realized that it was extremely important to hire an external expert. So they collaborated with neighbors in the case of Kökelberg, or with the local energy agency in the case of Debrecen, and they hired a person who could deal with the project planning. They also learned that it's very important to build a relationship with different governance levels, both with higher level of governance, so with the national or regional levels in these cases, in order to foster the implementation of the project, and also to start a dialogue with citizens. So to foster acceptability and also explain through different communication campaigns to their citizens why these projects are needed. And they also understood, of course, the process and what steps are required in order to set up such an initiative. The second example that I bring to you is a bit different. It's from Prospect Plus, so from the first learning cycle, and this could be also seen as a not so good example, but we think that it's very important to learn also from mistakes. So in this case, we had a mentee from Vilnius that also wanted to learn about EPCs, and she was matched with a mentor from Spain. And what turned out is that the legislation, the PPP legislation in the 2 countries is not similar, so it's different, which meant that the solution adopted in Spain could not be adopted in Lithuania. However, we followed with the mentee other possible solution, and we learned that recently she, with of course the municipality of Vilnius, she enrolled in an Interreg project. So this is to say that it's very important to foster discussion and dialogue amongst local authorities to make them understand that they can go beyond or learn from mistakes of others, and also form partnerships with other local governments in order to apply or to start other projects. And the third example that I want to bring to you is again from the Prospect Plus project, so from the just ended learning cycle, and is a peer learning between the two cities in Spain, Valladolid and Valencia. And this is important because we saw that not only it was very important for the mentee to learn from the mentor about EPC in buildings, but it was equally important for the mentor to get some knowledge out of the mentee, because it turned out that Valencia is very advanced in setting up energy communities and one-stop shops. So a two-way communication was established between the two local authorities, and this also fosters, of course, further collaboration. Something else which is related to what Belerta said before about the importance of cooperation between European projects is that, for example, some of our mentees are also applying to manage energy, and they take part in the manage energy masterclasses. And again, as I mentioned before, Interreg projects or also ELENA projects. So some of our mentees have participated in ELENA projects promoted by the EIB. Of course, aside from our internal mentors, we also have a team of facilitators who come from the network, so from Energy Cities, Eurocities, Federen, and the Opfer Austria Energy Agency, and they follow the exchanges, so the capacity building programs. So in case that both the mentors and the mentees are external to the consortium, we offer this figure that can foster discussion and touch upon the most important points in the exchanges between the cities. Aside for the actual peer learning project, we also launched a community of practice, which is meant to engage those who are not participating as mentees or mentors. So everybody is welcome to apply. With the community of practice, we offer online meetings, we offer replication webinars, policy dialogues, and also a collaboration space for members, which is hosted on the Eurocities network. You can participate as an active member, so if you have something to say, as an observer, so just participating and learning from others in our webinars, or as an expert, so as a speaker, for example, in one of the activities we organize. And in case you're interested in joining, there's a QR code on the slide, which you can follow to get to the registration form, where we ask you some questions. So we want to learn something from you in order to match you and point you to the best tool for you. And speaking about tools, just a very quick overview of the knowledge that we created within the project. I will not go into much detail for the sake of time, but this is one of the tools that we developed within the Prospect Plus project. It's an assessing tool for assessing the financial maturity of the project. And it's basically a self-assessment tool that cities and regions can use to check the level of bankability on a scale from 0 to 100 of their idea of sustainable energy measure. At the moment, it's only available for participants in the capacity building program, but at the end of the project, it will be made publicly available. And then if you navigate through our website, you will find handbooks like these ones, which are touching upon the different thematic areas, plus one special one on citizen finance. And here are other tools, for example, the financial indicator calculator, the glossary of financial terms, the recommendation matrix tools for decision making. And then last but not least, we have a database of replicable practices, which are divided into promising practices, innovative practices, and good practices. This is how they look like, but I will not go deep into their description. And very last thing I want to say, if there are local or regional authorities that are in the audience, there is still time to apply to the third learning cycle. The deadline is actually tomorrow, but we're thinking of maybe extending it by some days. And in any case, you can just click on the application form. The process should take you more or less 30 to 45 minutes to fill out. And we offer this time 3 local groups on top of the general call, so 1 in Italian, 1 in Polish, and 1, well, of course in English because it's in Ireland, but that is dedicated to Irish local authorities. This is the theme of the Prospect Plus project, but I already mentioned them more or less. And yeah, I think, sorry, that's it. Here are my contacts in case of further questions or if you're interested to participate, and I leave it here, and then I'm happy to answer questions in case there are any in the Q&A moment. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Julia. Thanks for that. Okay, let's move to our last presentation. We have Tomislav with the InPlan project. Tomislav, you should have the controls now. Oops, sorry.
Let me check. Yeah, I think it works. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this presentation. I will give you a brief overview of the Life InPlan project. As I said, my name is Tomislav Novosel. I work at the Northwest Croatia Regional Energy and Climate Agency, which is, as the name suggests, a regional energy and climate agency that covers the northwest part of Croatia. And InPlan is a project that I also have to say was co-written by Julia that presented before me. So a huge thank you to her as well, because without her, this project wouldn't be. This is a live project that will last for 3.5 years. It started in November, so it's still relatively fresh and is ongoing for another 3 years. It's coordinated by us, BRGA, and I'm the principal coordinator. And we also have a few other regional energy agencies as partners, as well as some knowledge partners on board. But what is the project about, and why am I talking about it here? If we've already heard a lot of information about the targets that the EU has in terms of its energy and climate ambitions, and in order for those ambitions to be achieved, most of the burden will have to be taken up by our cities, by our municipalities, and by our regions. And they are quite a complicated entity that consists of a lot of physical and non-physical elements, including a lot of construction, a lot of infrastructure, both energy infrastructure, green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, as well as I've said, some non-material issues like ownership and law, cultural heritage, and so on and so forth. And all of these elements have to be taken into account when we are trying to tackle the energy crisis and are trying to achieve Europe's energy and climate ambitions. And there are quite a few challenges when that is concerned. First and foremost, a lot of municipalities, unless they are, municipalities and regions, unless they are very strong regional governments as the ones we can find in Germany or Spain, or very strong municipalities that also function as states. For instance, Vienna, they very often have a lack of capacity or mechanisms to actually enact and enforce binding energy and climate policies, meaning that they usually rely on national laws and national legislation, so that their hands are very often tied when it comes to the implementation of their plans. There is very often a lack of vertical and horizontal integration, or at least alignment of strategies, plans, and policies. So this is usually between the national and the local and regional level. And there is often a lack of systemic and integrated approach to energy and climate planning. This is usually delegated to non-binding plans and strategies that I will mention later. And finally, and most importantly, there is often a lack in alignment between planning and the allocation of financial resources, as well as other resources within a municipality or region. So in short, what I'm saying is that there is very often a disconnect between planning and implementation, especially when energy and climate are concerned. Cities, regions have quite a few planning tools, such as Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plan, such as European Energy Awards, and many other similar mechanisms that, although are excellent tools within themselves, lack implementation mechanism or enforcement mechanisms, meaning that they are not mandatory, they're not really enforceable, and they can be ignored by the municipality itself, as well as other stakeholders within them. On the hand of implementation, the tools on the local and regional level, except in some of the cases I mentioned, are usually quite limited. So as I've said, the planning tools such as sustainable energy and climate action plans do basically provide a baseline assessment. They do provide a vision and goals, and they do provide indicative measures to achieve them. But what they are missing are enforcement mechanisms and enforcement tools to actually implement and achieve the measures to achieve the visions and goals. On the other hand, cities and municipalities and regions have spatial plans. Spatial plans are mandatory and they are basically law. If something is stated in a spatial plan, that cannot be easily ignored, and spatial plans also exist on a variety of levels. There's regional ones, city ones, or municipal ones, urban ones, and special spatial plans. The exact terminology differs from country to country, but in essence, they all function similarly. They are by their nature interdisciplinary tools that should take into account all of the elements of a territory that they cover. However, what they are mostly used for, unfortunately, is zoning and the enforcement of national legislations. Here you can see a few examples of the visual part of some spatial plans in which you can immediately spot some potential issues. So if you look at the right-hand side image, you can see the energy infrastructure map within a spatial plan of Croatian municipality. And the green lines represent natural gas lines, red represents district heating. And here you can immediately see an issue where there is a almost consistent overlap between natural gas and district heating, creating unnecessary competition between two energy sources, basically decreasing the technical and economic efficiency of both, and also makes decarbonization quite difficult because it makes it difficult to push for instance, district heating, and especially decarbonized district heating as an alternative to natural gas, since natural gas exists everywhere in this specific case. And this is basically where in-plan comes into play. The basic idea behind the project is to develop and roll out the so-called in-plan practice, which is basically a support structure for integrated spatial energy and climate planning, meaning planning that utilizes the existing tools of spatial planning to integrate energy and climate concepts within it, and therefore provides municipalities, cities, and regions with the capacity to not just plan, but also implement and enforce measures needed to achieve their energy and climate ambitions and goals. And basically the three elements that build this practice are, on the one hand, the planning methodology itself, on the other hand, a capacity building mechanism which will target both regional energy, climate, and development agencies, as well as municipalities and regions themselves, and a mechanism to match the proposed measures with concrete budget lines within the local and regional budgets in order to ensure resources exist for the measures that are being planned. The project itself will be tested out in 5 EU countries, Ireland, Sweden, Romania, Italy, and of course Croatia, where we will also test out a 2-stage capacity building program, targeting in the first stage the agency that I mentioned, and then in the second stage also the local and regional governments. And the timeline of this, as I mentioned, the project started in November of 2022 and will last until March 2026. End of last month, we've created a draft in-plan practice and a draft capacity building program, which we've tested and will soon start rolling out. And we expect a first round of external capacity buildings happening in September of this year, after which we will also start recruiting some potential replicators to start testing out the method across Europe, so beyond the initial 5 countries that we will be spearheading the project in. As I've said, the mechanism or the method itself basically focuses around the integration of several elements of planning around the central pillar of spatial planning, providing a lot of mechanisms for their actual enforcement. So this can include both the alignment of spatial plans with national infrastructure plans, with mobility and transport plans, and of course with energy and climate plans. This can also include air quality plans and so on and so forth. And an additional element to this will also, of course, be the alignment of the planning processes themselves with both local budgets, so specific budget lines within the local and regional budgets, as well as available resources on the EU level from things like the cohesion funds, operational programs, and so on. In practice, this basically means selecting measures from existing documentations, for instance, sustainable energy and climate action plans. This can also be sustainable urban mobility plans, climate protection plans, and so on and so forth. Determining which measures are suitable for the integration into spatial plans. So some will be, some won't be. For instance, capacity building will be very difficult to integrate, whereas anything related to a higher standard of construction will be easy. Well, easy, possible. And these measures need to be translated into a language that the spatial plans can accept, and they need to be integrated within them. Of course, the process itself isn't as easy, and it includes several steps between them. So the measures that will be proposed for integration have to be deeply analyzed, and technical documentation justifying their inclusion needs to be added. In some cases, this will be easier, in some cases more difficult, depending on the national legislation surrounding the spatial planning processes. The selected measures then have to be, as I've said, prepared and integrated into a spatial plan, which is then developed and at least submitted to a public consultation process, after which it gets finalized and formally adopted by a city or municipal county or a county council, depending on the level. In order for no surprises to happen during the whole process, continuous communication with the city, with the spatial plan developers, as well as the local and regional stakeholders, needs to be maintained. These are very sensitive processes, and there's a lot of interest at play, so this can be a rather long and complex procedures, so timely and consistent communication is key. We do have some experience with this already, so we do have some initial results, which I will also present a bit later. So for one city, we have already developed the guidelines necessary to integrate the energy and climate measures into spatial plans, and the measures have been integrated, the spatial plan has been accepted, and the area is now being developed. The process basically started with us going through the city's sustainable energy and climate action plan, and as I've said, identifying measures that can be integrated directly or indirectly, and some of them were then assessed in more detail. For instance, one of the measures was a push for a degasification of the heating grid, which basically required a lot of spatial assessments of the territory and the spatial assessment of the heating demand in order to justify the inclusion of low carbon heating zones. So as I've said, the process is fairly complex and does take a bit of time, and I'm really aware of the time we have, so I will wrap everything up. So as I mentioned, the process has been tested already, even though the project is quite young, and we do have some initial successful results from two cities. The first one I've very briefly presented, and the second one is the city of Zagreb, the Croatia's capital, in which we have created some special spatial plans for limited areas of the city, which will basically now be forced to be turned into 100% renewable districts. So basically no CO2 emissions from energy production on site. The draft methodology and the draft capacity building plans have been developed and tested, and we will slowly start to roll out the two-stage capacity building process. So as I've said, in the first stage, we will train our multipliers. So these are the energy, climate, and/or development agencies, which will then pass the knowledge on to the municipalities, cities, and regions that they work with. More news on this will come very soon. As I've said, we plan to roll this out latest by September of this year. And if you are interested in more information on this project, you can follow us on the InPlan website, as well as on social media through our hashtag. And if you have any additional information, you can get in touch via my email. I have rushed through this a bit because the webinar is supposed to end soon, and we should leave at least a little bit of time for questions and answers. So this is me.
Thank you very much, Tomislav. Yes, you're right. We're supposed to end right now, but I think if it's okay with our speakers, we might just take a couple of questions. I don't know if any of you need to rush away. Hopefully not. Let me see. So we had one question just really quickly, if the slides will be made available, and the answer is yes, the slides will be made available. So you can find them on the BuildUp website in a day or two later today or tomorrow. So we'll go to just a couple of questions. So quickly here, first one for Julia. Question: if we do not make it to submit an application for the approaching deadline, will there be a chance to apply at a later stage?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, of course, as I mentioned, this application deadline for tomorrow is for the third learning cycle, but we do have 4. So luckily there's still a chance. The 4th will run from May 2024. So ideally, I think the application time will be at the very beginning of 2024. So keep updated by looking at the website.
Good. And actually a follow-up question I can ask as well is, in order to participate, do LRAs need to have an executive project, or can they participate just with an idea?
Yeah, thanks again. An idea is sufficient. Of course, it's important to know at least what the measure that you want to implement is in general terms, but you don't need to have already evaluated. For example, you don't have to have audited buildings or to have a full-scale impact assessment of the measure. You just need to have an idea. For example, refurbish X number of schools, or change the street lighting in that area of the city, and that suffices for applying to Prospect Plus.
Great, thank you. Okay, a question for Tomislav. How can other cities, regions, and their agencies get involved in InPlan?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Well, as I said, there will be a capacity building program opening up around September of this year, where we plan to teach agencies, so climate energy development, about this process and how they can implement the process in their territories. Cities and regions can also get in touch with us if they need any support specifically from any of the project partners, or if they want to learn more about this, so that they can pass this information also on to their planning departments or to their agencies. So yeah, I mean, we will be looking for a lot of replicators and a lot of additional pilots to test this project in. And if anybody's interested, feel free to get in touch either directly with me or through the project website.
So another question, actually, this is a question from myself, and it's directed at all speakers. And it's a very broad question. So in your opinion, and with your experiences, what do you think is key to successful knowledge transfer in the energy efficiency of building sector? And are there some aspects that could be improved, specifically in terms of strategy? Maybe we can start with Berta.
Would you repeat the questions once again?
Sure. Yes. So it's a broad question, but in your opinion and with your experience, what do you think is key to successful knowledge transfer in the energy efficiency of building sector? And is there something that we could improve?
Yes, I already presented in the presentation the slides before. The key to the successful implementation of the projects is the transfer of the experience. All the projects there are in energy efficiency projects in the buildings. All the buildings are specifics. They may be similar to each other, but they are still unique. And the transfer of experience of implementation of energy efficiency standards from one building to another, it's very important for the users and for the implementers, and for the way how these standards are being applied, which are the challenges and which are the benefits and results. All of us needs to reach the results as soon as possible and to see the benefits of implementation of energy efficiency in the buildings. The sooner the better. And that's why this transfer of information from one project to another is very important, because we may, let's say, we may learn from the mistakes of each other, and these are the mistakes will not be replied to the other projects. And also, not only this, but also the transfer of the information between the industry and academia is very important. The industry nowadays do not have the let's say, the time, the needed time to do all the experiments. In this case, the collaboration between the academia and the industry is very important. The industry shall be aware that financing the academia to do the experiments, the needed experiments, is very important, because they may use these results coming from academia and apply that to the industry without waiting so long for the results in the building itself.
Thank you, thank you. So maybe the same question actually to Julia and Tomislav. Maybe Julia wants to start. If you have something different you'd like to add.
Yeah, sure. Building on what Blair already said, which I totally agree with. I think that in order to be successful, we need to, especially in Europe and in the context of local and regional authorities, we need to overcome the language barriers, which, as I said in my presentation, is still a problem in small municipalities, especially rural ones, and both in communicating the opportunities that are available at European scale and in meeting their demands. So in also catering for organizing, for example, a knowledge transfer in the local language. And I think communication is very important because we have some champions. So those cities or regions or municipalities that are members of the big networks that follow BuildUp, but that are in the circle of the EU funding, but there are so many others that have no idea that this world exists, and we have to be better in reaching out to them. And I think this is on us to make sure that they are reached and listened to when it comes to their needs. Yeah, I think this is very important.
Thank you, thanks. Tomislav, do you have something you want to add?
I'll be very brief. I think peer learning is incredibly important here. I think learning from people that are in a similar situation as you are, that have managed to overcome issues that you're also facing within a similar context is key. I think it's quite important to listen to positive experiences from your surroundings. It's very often you will have positive experiences from Europe's north being preached to Europe's south. A lot of the successful applications aren't really applicable. The successful cases aren't really applicable across the spectrum. So I think listening, as Julia mentioned, to people speaking your own language, giving you relatable cases and showing how things can actually be achieved within a similar context to yours is of great help. And I think more initiatives such as this are needed.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll wrap up in just a second. We got one last question just arrived from the audience. They say, thanks for very interesting presentations. Space heating remains by far the largest end use in most countries, but do you see also an increasing interest of regional or local authorities in solutions for summer comfort or space cooling, either in planning or investment schemes? So I suppose this is more for Julia and Tomislav.
I can jump.
Maybe I can. Yeah, no, go ahead, Tomislav.
I mean, I can mention, so Croatia, for instance, is a country that has very, very hot summers and very, very cold winters. And unfortunately, there's no district cooling, for instance, happening here. I don't think there is a district cooling system south from Vienna. There are a lot of talks about district cooling and about providing solutions to cooling. But cooling is still seen as a luxury, and most of the emissions, most of the issues are still connected to heating. And one more thing, cooling is mostly handled via split system heat pumps, so air-to-air heat pumps across Europe, which, although not ideal, are at least not a direct cause of CO2 emissions. So I think that heating is still seen as the primary issue on all levels.
Thank you. And Julia, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just very quickly from my side. So far, until the last learning cycle, I think specifically we didn't have any application that was looking at space cooling, but I agree that it is an issue that will come up more and more, especially in the south, like Tomislav mentioned. We usually see applications talking generally or generically about home renovation, so that includes also cooling and heating. But I can't wait to open the applications from the deadline tomorrow to see if that comes up a bit more promptly.
Yes, definitely. Actually, on that note, and later this year in July and August, BuildUp will cover on the topic of the month, renewable cooling solutions. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for. Okay, so we're about 11 minutes past our anticipated ending point, so I think we'll have to end there. BuildUp would really like to extend a big thank you to all our speakers and also to the audience, of course, for attending today's webinar. Again, you will be able to find the recording and the slides together on the BuildUp portal in a day or two, and of course on our YouTube as well. And actually, we will have, to let you know, we'll have our next webinar on Tuesday next week. It's part of a webinar series brought to you by the Drive Zero project called Circular Talks. And it's on Tuesday starting at 10 a.m. It's called Let's Talk Circular, Social and Affordable Housing. So go check that out. Thank you again to everyone, and we wish you a really pleasant end to your week.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.